See, he's trying to get us to a point where we live ultimately in a state of denial. Denial that we live as orphans, or that we even live fatherless. Denial that our story matters. Denial that we've been given a God-birthed identity. Denial that we've been offered a worth, which, by the way, Jesus went to the cross to prove, to secure for us. Denial that we each have a unique and critical destiny and a mission, and that we're not just here to take up space. Denial that second voice even exists, that there's anything wrong, that there's any true father that's real or worth pursuing. So here's the steps of the fatherless cycle, and we're going to go into them in depth next week. But they might look familiar, because it's what we typically call the grief cycle, but it's in reverse. It's in reverse. We start with acceptance. This is where that belief, that deep belief of that's formed, that our normal, right? We grow up and we just accept what we grew up in. We accept that our normal, that's where our normal is formed. That's where our modus operandi, our MO is formed. We get comfortable with how things are. Then phase 2, the second step, it's the depression step. Now this isn't meaning emotional sadness or despondency, but it's a resignation that this is as good as it gets. Then we move into this bargaining phase where we go, well, I'm going to try to find identity and value and destiny on my own. I'm going to perform for it. I'm going to see if I can earn it somehow. And sometimes we earn it like I did in trying to pursue stuff, job, whatever. Sometimes we pursue it by resigning to it. And that sounds strange, that pursuing it can be in the form of resigning to something. But the idea is that we get stuck in our own little prison, and if we can stay there, we're getting something out of it. And so this phase of bargaining, it says, if I just shrink back and I don't push anything, maybe I'll be okay. But then we move to the anger phase. And this is an internal focused frustration, because we're not meant to perform to get value. And we don't want to ultimately live resigned to being worthless. And so this anger phase is, again, not outward focused. I'm not angry at other people. It's inward focused. It's me telling myself, you should just kill that foolish heart of yours. You can't find answers. You try to perform for answers. You can't find answers. Just stop trying. And this is the phase where people often check out. They just give up. But if you don't do that, then the enemy moves us to the denial phase, which is stop hoping, stop trying, just live oblivious and numb. Like I said, we'll go into these much deeper next week and how we move, what each one is about, and how we move through them. But that second voice initiates that cycle when we're young, using that whole situation, message, lie, agreement, response pattern, ultimately to take us towards denial. But to recognize it, we have to realize how we fight this, how we understand it. So in 2 Corinthians 10, 4-5, it says, the weapons we fight with are not weapons of the world. On the contrary, they have divine power to demolish strongholds. We demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God. We take captive every thought and make it obedient to Christ. So I want to break this down a little bit for you. So what it says, we have divine power to demolish strongholds. What's strongholds? In the verse it says strongholds, and then it goes on to tell us what is strongholds. So it says we have divine power to demolish strongholds, and then it says we demolish arguments and every pretension. So it's telling us, what's a stronghold? What's an argument and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God? Well, an argument is a diverging or opposing point of view. So one stronghold, a stronghold, one definition, or one part of the definition, is it's a diverging or opposing point of view. It says pretension. Every pretension, or pretension is a claim or assertion of a claim. So a pretension is saying, I know what this is. I'm going to define this. I'm going to take hold of the definition of something. And then it says sets itself up against. So it's in opposition to. And the knowledge, and again, we read the knowledge of God in our current Western society, and we think knowledge of God meaning I know my Bible, I know the information, and certainly we need to know. But again, as I've harped on for 2 weeks now, it's talking about knowledge, knowing. It's that word again, the knowledge of God, the knowledge, the deep, intimate, experiential knowledge of God. It's deep. It's again, using that term for sexual union. That's a pretty intimate knowledge of God. To take captive, so seize and control, and obedience is willing to comply to another's request. So I want to reread that verse, those verses, 2 Corinthians, with these definitions placed in, because sometimes I know it helps me to go kind of get it out of the churchy's mindset that maybe if I've heard this verse a lot. The weapons we fight with are not the weapons of the world. On the contrary, they have divine power to demolish strongholds. We demolish diverging or opposing viewpoints and every claim or assertion of claim that sets itself up in opposition to the intimately acquired truth of God. And we seize and control every thought and make it willing to comply to Christ's request. See, the enemy is speaking these diverging and opposing viewpoints. He's trying to say, this is who you are. This is what you're worth. This is your destiny. And by impugning us, he's also impugning our Father. Just like when we believe what God says is true about us, when we believe our worth, when we believe our identity, we're ascribing to him his rightful place. Well, when we don't believe him, we're doing the opposite. We're giving the second voice, the voice of the father of lies. We're saying, you're my daddy. And that's what that voice wants. That's what he wants. That's what he stepped into in Genesis when he said, did God really say? Oh, let me tell you what the truth really is. Don't trust that father. Trust this Father. And so we're bringing all of those diverging and opposing viewpoints, any claim, any assertion of a claim that's setting itself up to what we know is the real truth. And we're saying, hey, I want to take every thought, all the whispers that I believed, and I'm going to bring them, and I'm willing to submit them. And to be in compliance with what Christ wants, what Christ says, what he came to do. It sounds an awful lot like search me, know me. Test me, know my anxious thoughts. See if there's any offensive way in me and lead me in the path everlasting. So we must recognize how the Father lies speaks to us. You must recognize how the Father lies speaks to you specifically, because he has a way that he has whispered to you your whole life that's unique to you. Now, it's not unique because one of his lies is that he says, you're the only one, and you're not. So it's not unique. He has a pattern that he follows. I've talked to hundreds, thousands of men in retreats and things like that. You'd be surprised. You get a group of 50 guys together, you'll hear about 5 different versions of whispered lies that a guy's heard. And it's the same. You'll talk to this guy, and you'll talk a few more, and you get to guy number 7, and it's exactly the same. And guess what? Both guys think they're the only one. And in a group of 50, you probably got 10 people, 10 guys struggling with the same beliefs about who they are and their value, their identity. So, but it's unique to you. It's unique to your story. There's a way that Satan has come and whispered to you about the answers to those questions. Who am I? What am I worth? There's a way that he whispered to you when you went through those painful situations, whatever they were. Sometimes he whispers, just get over it. That wasn't that bad.